There are moments in your life when everything just feels right, feels aligned, in line, that things are right where they need to be. Not because circumstances are perfect or because you fixed something and you got lucky, but because every part of you is pointing in the same direction at the same time and your whole body knows it. What it is your higher self. And that feeling is the feeling we are all working towards. The feeling is contentment. Freedom is the product of aligning with the higher self. Now, most of us have felt this feeling at least once. In fact, I would say it is a feeling that we are all trying to work towards, whether we know it or not. And in a society that gives us these destinations to get to, marriage, graduating college, owning a home, what we are really looking to gain is a feeling of contentment and a sense of owning our own freedom. And most of us have felt it at least once. And usually we feel it and then we accept that it goes away. Today we are naming it for what it is and understanding a bit about how it works. My name is Sarah Nickerson and welcome to Sovereign Humankind, Evolving Inner Authority Through Metaphysical Skill. I'm a psychic medium and founder of nextgenmedium.com and the NextGen Sovereign Online Metaphysical Abilities Education Center and Community Space, focused on developing human bioperceptual technology, intuition, psychic ability, and purpose-led living. Or, as today's episode talks about, higher self merging. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the third capacity of the trio, and that is called higher self merging or gaining alignment with the higher self. So the last two episodes, episode 7 and 8, we talked about two capacities, psychic perception and intuition. Today we're going to complete the trio with higher self as coherence. And the same argument is made three different ways across all three of these episodes. These systems are already there. They're already working. They're already online. The work isn't turning it on. The work is tuning into it, gaining awareness of it, and beginning to utilize the tool and trusting its usage, recognizing and trusting what has been there the whole time, but no one's shown you or told you about these things or how they work. And after this episode, we'll be talking about how to work with these capacities and sort of the ultimate destination of like what really makes sovereign humankind, like what is our end goal. So let's go ahead and set the stage and define what exactly higher self merging, higher self alignment, in tune with the higher self, all these different phrases meaning the same thing. What is the definition here and what is it actually when it comes to how you do things now versus how you do things in the sense of becoming aligned with the higher self? So let's define higher self. And in this episode, we're using higher self as coherence. Okay, so the word coherence comes up in this episode a lot. But before we go further, here's what it actually means in plain terms. Coherence is when your emotions, your body, your thinking, and your direction are all pointing the same way at the same time. They're all working together. There's a meaning behind each of these components that's steering you in a particular way. They build upon each other, they support each other, and there's a through way for all of these things. And when they're in coherence, it's like things are falling into place, in tune, synchronized, in harmony. These are the words we think of when we are aligned and coherent. And when these things are aligned, you feel it and you see it. And when things aren't aligned, you feel that too, and you see that as well. And you receive plenty of information that is telling you exactly what you're feeling. So let's talk about what the higher self actually is. So here's what the higher self, let's start with what it's not. The higher self is not a separate mystical entity that's just detached from you and floating around you, watching from a distance, judging you. This is where I talk about the higher self as the God self. And this is where I can get in trouble with people that want the practical usage of the abilities, but not the religion or spiritual aspect, which is fine. This is also where I get in trouble with people who have religion as part of their belief system, in which God is a separate sense of an entity. That is not at all how this works in what I do and how I teach and the understanding here. In fact, I understand religion as part of the detachment of us connecting with our higher selves through history. And I believe it is a way to keep people powerless, is to feel a sense that you are detached, that you do not have a direct connection with God, whatever that means for you or whoever else. I was a person that did not believe in God. I eventually felt like there was something, but I didn't believe it was being told to us through religions, for the most part, in a sovereign way. I don't want to get too deep into this, but this is the part of the discussion that's a little uncomfortable because I use the word God. And the concept that I worked with before even going into and having like a spiritual awakening was that God was not a separate entity, that each one of us had the capacity to become God, that there was something we could elevate to where we would slough off the conditioning and become united with God in our body on this adventure. That has changed a little bit with my spiritual awakening. I don't think we can become God in an earth body, but we can get pretty darn close to it, I think. And that's what we're working towards. We're working towards that sense of heaven on earth. I am bringing a metaphysical, spiritual reality to my human physical body and sharing that amongst others. That's what I think. But let's bring the discussion back down to a practical piece here, because one of the things that I really want to avoid with this conversation is using the word God and using the word frequency. But there's only so much I can avoid here. But the higher self is a self that we strive for, that I think we have had experience with and have identified in ourselves a sense of a natural state of being, and that self was able to emerge when we broke a habit or had a realization that moved us closer towards happiness and health, but more importantly, a more fixed sense of happiness or a more consistent sense of health. And we can absolutely bring psychology into the mix when it comes to understanding the higher self. And I like to think of it as the sense of who we are and a most mature sense of that. And there's so much that you grew up with that had you hold on to a specific way of doing things that maybe were blunted and you had a difficulty of moving past that. It is the sense of recognizing the inner child and parenting that inner child. We can think of it in that kind of sense of psychology, where you're looking to mature the blunted pieces of the child that still lives within you, or just even acknowledging and recognizing that child within you. And that, in a sense, is understanding a more truer sense of who you are and how you can be responsible, moving yourself away from a sense of like, this is how it is and this is how I'm trapped, or this is just my burden. Your work is to move that to a place of happiness, a place of ease, a place of comfort, bliss, and joy, with a goal of having consistency in this feeling, in this emotion, in this place, in this condition. Higher self involves frequency. It does exist at a different frequency than where most of us spend our days. In fact, I would say your frequency is probably higher than most people's frequencies. So you're already moving yourself towards that higher self. Like you're already on the way there. And so you can recognize in this discussion, like a sense of your conditioned self, the version of you that built up through years of survival, through social contracts, other people's definitions of you, moving through institutions, that self that had to operate at a lower frequency in order to survive all of these things. And where you are now, you've already moved up the ladder of frequency. You're already moving yourself towards that place of equilibrium, which is a sense of contentment, of satisfaction. Of course, we always want to move more towards that bliss sense because that is the God frequency. That is what makes us feel like we're in tuned and aligned. But I think for most of us who are where we're at, being able to access that bliss is where we want to be. We want to be able to get in there and feel it and understand that there might be cycles that happen where we attain it and then we move on and are still working ourselves and understanding our conditioning in order to slough that off and move ourselves closer and closer to a more exact version of our blissful God self-energy frequency. I think you're probably quite understanding of these concepts. And I'm just speaking what you already know. Maybe I'm saying things that are more defined and that make you go, oh, okay, yeah, she gets it. She's putting it into words and that makes how she's saying it makes sense to me. Or you might have a completely different way of understanding things, which is fine too. The point isn't me telling you how things are. What I'm telling you is how I can understand it in order for you to go explore, and then you have something to compare things to. One of the biggest overall concepts is that we don't even know this option exists, right? Being able to tell you how I think it works isn't necessarily telling you the existing of this option. It's telling you what the options are here. It's hard to compare something when you don't have something to compare it to. But the higher self is underneath all of the conditioned self, the damaged, sad, repressed self. And it's the version of you that is running at the frequency of your truest nature. It is the beacon that we are always checking in with, and that checks in with us. I really think of the higher self as the partner in our lives. Your higher self is your guide, as your adult mentor, and the inner child who is the conditioned self trying to merge with the higher self. This is a trusting relationship that needs to be built. And it's a trust within the self that if we don't recognize that there's a partnership happening there, then we're kind of losing out. And I think that is an important piece to add into this particular episode, because as we move forward, we really need to think of ourselves as kind of two entities working together. And it's the higher self that you are working to merge with, who's helping to guide you, who's showing you the plots on the map. And when you feel really good and you feel like you're right in line, that's when you are one. That's when you are merged. That's when everything is in homeostasis. And that is the natural state. So in the past couple of episodes for this phase 2 that we're moving through in our episodes, we talk about each of the capacities as sort of home in different parts of your body. And so we talked about the psychic perception, living in the mind, cerebral and imaginative, and it's where we receive information for our psychic consideration. Intuition, we talked about it being felt in the body. I tend to focus on the lower half of the face. It goes down into your gut. It gives you yes, no, go, wait signals. And then when we talk about the higher self really is a merging of needing the brain, needing thinking, but also receiving signaling through emotions. So the higher self utilizes both the mind and the body because it needs both in order to do what it does. So it needs to receive the messaging from emotion because that's how it knows, that's how it's indicating to us where we are. When we feel an emotion, is telling us where we are and how far away we are from merging with the higher self. And then the other aspect is needing the brain, because this is where utilizing higher self is more in line with how we kind of use our brains already. We generally use our brains more strategically or utilizing critical thinking and planning. And those are those higher brainwave states that when we're doing psychic work, we're actually trying to get into the lower states. So we're actually utilizing the other brainwave states that are available to us when we are working with intention of higher self stuff. So this is when we are actively utilizing logic and we are looking to build, make, and choose. And I think with this capacity, this is probably the one that we feel the most sense of like ownership of our lives here. This is where I make the choices. This is where I plan and I strategize and I make things happen. This is where I change things. And that is absolutely what higher self work is all about. And one of the main components of working with higher self is the sense of feeling good, is the emotional state of like satisfaction and contentment, even bliss, that these emotions are the home signal. Feeling these emotions are you in alignment with the higher self. And part of the theory of higher self is that that feeling is home, contentment, bliss, satisfaction, and that this is the place of homeostasis. This is where your body feels healthy, it feels natural, it feels good. And we can even get specific with emotions as to their influence with higher self work. So the emotion of compassion has a place, the emotion of inspiration has a place, of bliss. Like each of these have different words and they're different places on the emotion spectrum. But the more we can get closer to a sense of feeling really, really good for a long period of time, that is really our goal with higher self work. It's important to understand that emotion is blips on the radar screen, and they are telling us something to move us towards something. So we are receiving the information of emotion, and then we're utilizing our logic, our strategy to move us towards our higher self merging. I think it's important to understand that emotion is signaling. And in order to do work with higher self, we really need to understand our relationship with emotion, that's like the next topic, I think. But we need to understand that there are different emotions that are initiating different things. But either way, the overall goal with higher self work is we're moving towards feeling good. It can be experienced as feeling inspired. It can be experienced as thinking, planning, and generating ideas, which might cross over into psychic, and with intuition, which could be giving you the go ahead to move in a certain way. And higher self work not only is about identifying emotion happening and the understanding direction to go and the destination, which is feeling good, but how do we perpetuate it? How do we keep it going? How do we move it if we're having difficulty feeling good? And part of the work with higher self is working purpose. And there's even a practice to it. that we will talk more about in the next episode or the episode after that. I can't remember. But all of these together is talking about emotion, our sense of creating our own destiny, and moving towards feeling good as a more continuous state. Of course, there's ebbs and flows, but the goal of higher self alignment and tuning is we can stay up in those good feeling emotions for longer periods of time and less fluctuation away from it. The idea is we build momentum and sort of this perpetual motion machine that has us in a cycle of feeling good, and there's a little bit of wavering as to feeling bliss and satisfaction or contentment. And if something comes along to interrupt that process, the momentum's built so it doesn't even knock it out of the way. You know what I mean? It just keeps it going. And if there is something that comes along to really grind it and slow it down, it doesn't take it too far down the line of those terrible feeling emotions. And even if you do reach down into that area, you're able to move yourself back to where you were because you had the tools and the foundation set, the strategy and the plan that allowed you to get back to where you were in a quick amount of time because it feels good. And manifestation. That's what this whole concept of higher self stuff was originally about. It was about manifestation. But then when I realized when I was teaching manifestation, it was about merging with the higher self. And that manifestation was a product of higher self alignment. And then it was like, oh shit, it's not about manifestation. It's about aligning with the higher self. Manifestation is the product of that. Abundance is what comes along. Great relationships, quality living, health. All of this comes along with merging with the higher self. You can definitely get money. You can definitely get quality relationships. But for it to have a lasting effect, for it to be something you can count on, that it has gained the momentum, that even if something comes along, it just gets deflected because you're already spinning in this thing you made, that you worked towards, that you strategized, that you planned, that you worked to make happen. What is it about this higher self stuff that has made it so we don't trust even that concept of feeling good for a long period of time? Like that's our natural state. We were taught that feeling good is okay, but not all the time. The specific dismissal pattern for the higher self, it's a little bit different for the ones of psychic perception and intuition, because what we're looking for with higher self is feeling good and being okay with ease, which is totally against a lot of cultures' way of living their everyday lives. To which I go, why do you think that's normal? Why do you think, let me specify because I didn't use all the words in my head. Why do you think constantly working, constantly doing something is healthy and normal? Why do you think that? Not accusatory. It's why, where does that come from? Where's the evidence that that's how it should be? Because when we get down to it, working an 8-hour day, that's the norm. But is it healthy? Is it productive? Does it actually matter? And in the end, probably not. And I think part of it is because we almost identify not feeling good as the deposit of betterment for later. And maybe that struggle is proof of effort. And that effort is ultimately what gets us where we want to be or what we want to get. And I think in these modern times, we're recognizing the effort of going to school for 4 years to get a bachelor. Hi, this is my story. Really didn't pay off. My husband didn't even go to college or tech school or anything after high school. And he makes twice as much as I do. Even though I have a bachelor's, this is the reality. I put in the effort. I did the struggle. So why am I not getting my reward? When something feels right and clear and easy, we look for the catch. Wait a second. Why was this so easy? What did I do wrong? That would be my inner dialogue. What did I fuck up? How did I fuck this up? We assume it cannot be real if it does not cost something. And ultimately, this is conditioning. It runs deep. It's cultural, it's familial, it's institutional. It's what gets work out of us where somebody else benefits. Rarely do we benefit, or rarely do we get like an even trade in the process. I think about the 5-day work week. I think it's absolute bullshit that most of my time during my waking hours during the work week are spent with people that aren't my family. I think it is absolutely insane that this is how the world works. I am not accepting of that. I have to go along with it, but it really does not feel or sit well with me, especially when I have children. I can understand maybe 3 days out of the week working maybe 3 10-hour days. I can do that. I think that's okay, because then there's 4 days where I can live my life. And I think more than half should be mine. That's what I think. And even when it comes to having my own business, I do not want to be a slave to my business. And I will create whatever ways, create ease so that I can have joy when I do my work and I don't feel stressed, even though there are definitely conditioned parts of me that have these deadlines in my head that I keep missing. I'm always missing them, and I am in chronic disappointment with myself because I can't meet any deadline ever. And then the other thing is I pack too much into what needs to be done and when. I can never live up to my own expectations, and it is exhausting and debilitating. And that's why my procrastination really is terrible, and why it's taking me forever to get these episodes out. We live in a system that needs us to feel guilty when we are not producing. That makes rest feel like theft. That treat ease as laziness and discomfort as virtue. Those systems are not neutral. They are designed, and what they design is a version of you that cannot hear a signal that says, this feels good. This is right. This is the way. The other part of why we stopped trusting the higher self signal is what we were taught about emotions. We learned that emotions are a problem to manage and that it's not information to receive. We learned to suppress our emotions, to override them, to medicate them, to ignore them. So when the higher self tries to communicate through emotion, including through inspiration, we don't have a framework to hear it as a message. We hear it as noise. The fragmented feeling of performing a version of yourself you are not is just as real and precise as the feeling of coherence. Both are your system sending data, and neither is something to push down. I think one of the biggest takeaways is understanding that emotion is messaging. Emotion is telling you something. So what does it look like to merge with the higher self, to be in line with the higher self? Because this is the goal. This is the point of listening to your emotions, of taking what they have to say and going, this is the emotion I feel, and over here's the emotion I want to feel. How do I get from there to there? And so we start with the understanding that emotions are messaging. Simple version of what claiming the higher self actually starts with. Your emotions are not you. Period. Your emotions are messages, and we can maybe say they're messages from the higher self to the conditioned self, to the you version that's not happy. And they are telling you where you are on a map. And as soon as you have the understanding of what the emotion is, you have something to work with. You know where to go from there. And this is a simple breakdown. If you feel shitty, your higher self is telling you you're not aligned. It's not who you are. It's information. If you feel inspired, your higher self is telling you, yes, this direction, move. you are working your purpose. If you feel content, you feel free, liberation, even for a moment, your higher self is telling you, this is home. This is where you should be. You can be here all the time if you want to. This is an option. Remember this. You will always be working towards this. You don't want to win the lottery. You want to feel liberated. You want to feel home. You can do that without the lottery because it builds freedom. It gives you choice. Most of us have spent years treating those messages as problems or as moods, as personality traits. This is what we do now. Sorry. The reframe is that they are a communication system. It's information. And it's been running your whole life. And now we are looking at the emotion as an artifact. It's an object. It's telling you something. It's not telling you about you, trying to make you feel a certain way about you. It's giving you information, whether you're paying attention to it or not. And I got to say, I may have understood the concept of my emotions are not me. But once I really started going through perimenopause, I had to really draw the connection that when I felt a doom feeling, which happened a lot, it really makes you feel like the end of the world is happening and you feel powerless. I had to make the connection. This emotion is not my emotion, even though it sent me to the ER. I had to make the connection that when I felt doom feeling, that was a shift in my hormones. I couldn't have known that back then when I was in the ER, but I know it now. And when I feel it, I go, I have an intellectual understanding that this is my hormones and this is not mine. In fact, this whole journey of perimenopause has been a whole mind fuck about emotions because all of it is there all the time. And all the time, I have to hold emotions at a distance and go, this is not mine. This is not me. It's telling me something. What is it telling me? I'm feeling really sad today. This is probably telling me I'm somewhere in my cycle that has hormones really going kind of crazy right now. And then there's like conditions I'll feel that'll be like, okay, I'm getting to my period here. Even though I'm taking birth control that's supposed to stop cycles, like I'm still having cycles somehow. Even if I don't bleed, like I'm still having cycles because things are still, the cascade of effects are still happening. Next step, you have an emotion. You're holding it away from yourself and you're going, what is it trying to tell me here? This is where higher self becomes different than the other two capacities. The other two capacities, it almost feels like something else is passing along the information. And in this sense, the emotion emerging can almost feel like, okay, this is the metaphysical aspect, is the emotion surfacing. Like, where is it coming from? How is it getting initiated to come into my awareness? Like, that's the mystical, magical part that we'll call metaphysical. But once you get the message, it's not a formula as to a language of where do I go from here. It's not psychic information to decipher. It is, this is where I am and this is where I want to go. And now you get to use your logic. You get to use your strategy. So if you know you're not feeling good, then your next step is, well, what's an emotion that feels better than this one that's reachable? Your strategy component is, what can I always go to if I'm feeling meh or if I'm feeling kind of sad? What is the emotion I can jump to and what is the strategy of how I get there? For instance, this is just like a toe dip into like higher self stuff that we talk about with integration with the community. There is so much information about how to hack your brain, how to dip into that dopamine, how to dip into the serotonin. It can be foods you eat. It can be actions you do, supplements you take. Okay? This is how we're getting there. First, we got to build like a foundation and routines that make you feel good more often. That is already getting you closer to the higher self. But if you're having a sad day, Like, what's the thing that's going to make your day a little bit better? These are my components. Ready? Bubbles. I fucking love bubbles. I don't get it. I think it's stupid how much I find joy out of dipping the wand into the bubble batter. That's what came out. And then like moving it around and the big bubbles, watching them float and the colors, and then seeing how long they last. And they don't last long, you know, they're there and then they're gone. And I will sit for 15 minutes doing that, and it puts me in a place of homeostasis. It brings me back. It brings me back. What are the things that bring you back? A hot shower. That can be really good. Bubble gum. I hate the sugary feeling in my teeth, but I love like just chomping away and like not even caring about what people think of my mastication happening. But chewing the gum, like that is really satisfying to me, and like really just like chomping down on it, but blowing bubbles too. I gotta blow bubbles. And I don't care what people are thinking around me. So I got to be careful to do it in a place, and you know, there's a place and time for Sarah's profane bubblegum chewing sessions. Like those are 2 examples. 3 songs to have on hand that make you happy. And that is something else that is my go-to in order to vibe high. And this is when we bring up compassion as a core emotion. Compassion is a bridge. That word is so useful with higher self work. It's for yourself and sometimes for whoever or whatever puts you in the feeling you're in. Not that we're blaming anybody for doing things that make you have a feeling. Those are the things happening for you that you need to go, okay, what is this telling me? Growing sort of a logical understanding, but having a logical understanding isn't the whole deal. Like it's not the healing thing. Like there's more of an integration process that needs to happen there. But at least you're growing the awareness of objectifying and gaining the understanding. This is all therapy shit, you guys. Finding a thread of compassion is often what moves things. And then you build small strategies, what actually shifts the feeling, what has worked before, what can you put in place that builds momentum. This isn't about building a life where you're just positive all the time. You're not pretending to feel better than you do. You are taking the emotional signal seriously enough to do something about it, and that is skill. And that is what working with higher self actually looks like in practice. You sense an emotion, you're putting a word to the emotion, and you're going, okay, where do I go from here? This is choice. This is why I talk about higher self gives you choice. As soon as you know what the information is, then you go, okay, do I move or do I just sit in this space? Boom, options. Having options gives you freedom and gives you the power of your destiny. And when we understand alignment with the higher self as that is our destiny, like that's what we are looking to work towards. That is the option I always want to choose, or I want to choose most often. That is what this work is about. This is what you are setting yourself up for. It's not an overnight success. It takes time. It takes building. And this is really hard for me, but I've been there. I know the feeling of perpetually moving bliss. I know it's possible. I know what it feels like, and I know how to get there. And I will always, always be working towards that my entire life, even just thinking about it and not actively moving towards it. So if you are not feeling good, that's okay. You just got to know what the next step is. It's not your end of the road destination that you'll be able to get to if you're not feeling good, but there's a step in that process that gets you there. And there is behaviors, routines, tools that you have in that process that are your strategy to get up there more often. So the three capacities all together, we've talked about them all. Psychic perception gathers information you would not have gotten from logic alone. Intuition gives you the directional signal of go, stop, wait, not now. And it tells you timing. And the higher self tells you where you are by what you're feeling. And it gives you the capacity to build toward where you want to be. And in the end, where you want to be is a sense of feeling good and building a life of ease and abundance. I hate using that word, but I gotta use that word because when you are in alignment with your higher self, the product is manifestation. These are not separate tools. They work together, and none of them are brand new to you. They've all been there. There's a reason why each of these concepts I'm talking about and expanding on in these past few episodes, there's something there that you've had experience with, but nobody taught you these things. Nobody taught you how to recognize these things or the integration of these things or what the purpose is. So that's what we're doing here. And ultimately, when it comes to merging with the higher self, we are gaining our personal sovereignty, owning our personal sovereignty. You can't do that without knowing that these exist or defining what they are. Ultimately, this is the power to steer yourself. Higher self tuning of all three of these concepts, of these capacities, is probably the one you will spend the most time and concerted effort in using, doing. It takes a lot of trial and error. It takes time. And the work now is learning to recognize them, is to test them, trust them, and then integrate and build with them deliberately, purposefully, in line with feeling good, in line with the higher self. It's so funny how I grew up with emotion as something that I learned to ignore and ultimately felt when I had an emotion, almost feeling trapped in the human experience with these emotions because they were me. These were my emotions. And not only would I feel emotions, but I would feel emotions about the emotions, like guilt and shame. And in this work, ultimately, what you are gaining understanding of is that when you feel an emotion, this is the doorway to your freedom. So what once felt like the thing that was trapping you is now the thing that you are wanting, because once you have an understanding of the emotion, just the word, just giving it a word, shame, guilt, fear, boredom, once you have the emotion, then you know where you are on this map. And this map is showing you the pathway to ease, comfort, satisfaction, contentment. And it's freedom because you get to choose. And what's amazing to me, I talk about freedom. It's all right there right now. And everything that I'm telling you in the podcast is how you access it. And for the most part, this is probably a free experience for you to listen to the podcast. So not only are these skills accessible, you don't have to download anything. You don't have to upgrade to anything. What you have to do is put an effort into it. For some people, that's too expensive. But I am telling you, you have everything you need. And this podcast gives you everything you need to know in order to own these tools, to start experiencing them, to start trusting them. And with that, you start integrating it into your experience, and it is truth. Think about a moment in your life when you felt completely free. You felt content right where you were supposed to be. When something you made or said or did just landed and you knew it. And the feeling in your body was like, yes, this is home. This is what life is supposed to feel like. This is what I live for. Working with the higher self is building that to occur more often, have a steadier evolution, have that happening more steadily, more often. And it all starts with taking an emotion and holding it in front of you and just saying, what are you trying to tell me? The work is not finding something you have never experienced. The work is understanding what has actually happened in those moments so you can build a life that returns to that feeling more and more often and eventually creates momentum that keeps you there even when things get hard. What are some key takeaways? The higher self is not separate of you. It is of you. It is your partner. And it is always helping you, guiding you to get you to your natural state, to get you back home. Emotions are not your identity. They are messages from the higher self. They are messages telling you where you are and where to go. Coherence. That's not a feeling you achieve just once. It's something you work towards, and you utilize emotions, your body, your thinking, and your ability to choose. They're all pointing the same way. You know what it feels like. We are all working towards the same thing. And freedom is the destination. Contentment is home, and this is what we're all working towards. We have now named all three capacities, psychic perception, intuition, and the higher self, as a felt experience of alignment that you have already lived, but maybe couldn't quite define. In the next 3 episodes, we move from naming these systems to working with them. Episode 10 goes deep into emotion as a messaging system and what it looks like to move through an emotional state deliberately. If today's episode planted a seed around that, next week is where it starts to grow. For now, think about a moment where you felt contentment. You felt at home. You felt free, or you felt completely yourself. And let yourself recognize that moment as real data, as being aligned with the higher self. What did it take to get you there? That's going to be information that's going to help you along the way. But please don't believe anything I told you today. You got to go try it for yourself. And maybe the next episode will help you in doing that. Don't believe anything I told you. You must go explore it. If anything in this episode gave you a new way of seeing something you have already experienced, or has clarified something for you, share it with someone who is ready to hear it. The more people walking around with this framing, the easier it gets for everybody. The Next Gen Sovereign community at nextgenmedium.com is where you can go deeper than the podcast can take you. We've got levels of membership depending on where you are and what you are ready for. If today's episode landed and you're ready to start building a relationship with your own higher self, the Next Gen Sovereign Foundations program is where that begins. Come find us at nextgenmedium.com. And if you appreciated the information that I shared with you, please consider making a donation at buymeacoffee.com/nextgenmedium. This is Sarah Nickerson of nextgenmedium.com and the Next Gen Sovereign community. Be well, take care, and get to observing. See you next time.